And joining us right now on the Rothman Orthopedics guest line, quite frankly, the best to ever do it. Hall of Fame sports writer, all around amazing guy, playwright, analyst on TV, radio, contributor, back with WIP, back with NBC Sports Philadelphia for this amazing Eagles run. The man does it all, the great Ray Didinger. Ray, how are you, my friend?
I'm great, Mark. Great to be with you again.
Oh, I left out the 48. Is it 48 Emmys? How many Emmys? What do we got here? What do we got there behind you?
6.
Oh, there we go. A modest 6, right? But no, I want to say this because I just learned this is incredible. Your play, Tommy and Me, which I've seen a couple of times. It's fantastic. I recommend it for everybody. You just found out you guys are going to be putting it back on Bucks County Playhouse in May and also the Uptown Theater in September as well. You guys are just like you're printing copies of your book. You're just, putting this play on every stage, my friend. This is incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible when you consider that we debuted Tommy and Me in 2016 and that here we are 2023 and it's still going. And theaters still want it. It's great. It really is great. And we did Bucks County Playhouse last year and had a great run up there in New Hope. It's a wonderful theater. God, it's a great theater right there on the river. In the springtime, it's a beautiful place. And so they wanted us to come in May 17th to June 11th. So it's a nice long run. And then the Uptown Theater in Westchester, right on High Street there. We had been in conversation. In fact, we were supposed to do the play there in 2020. And then, of course, the pandemic came and every theater's all shut down. So we've been trying to put it back together again ever since. So they decided this year to bring it into their schedule, which coincides beautifully with the start of the next football season. So we're really excited. So May at the Bucks County Playhouse and September at the Uptown in Westchester. I hope folks come out and support it.
I'm sure they will. I mean, as they have been for this play. And you did such a wonderful job writing it, and the actors do such a great job portraying the story. I do recommend it for not just every Eagles fan, but just every fan of going to the live theater. It really does check every box when it comes to just watching a great performance there. And then I understand you also have a book signing coming up Saturday before the Super Bowl. You're going to be in Wilmington, right? Wilmington, right. Delaware?
Yeah, the Barnes & Noble on Concord Pike, right there, Route 202. We're going to be there. I'll be there on Saturday, day before the game, 3 to 5, signing copies of Finished Business and the Eagles Encyclopedia, which, by the way, if the Eagles win on Sunday, we'll be doing a whole new edition of Eagles Encyclopedia coming to bookshelves near you next September. So I will once again, Mark, I'll be back on deadline on Monday morning.
You can't not have a deadline. Now, I know a lot of people made a big deal. Oh, he's back from retirement. I'm just so glad, as I've joked with you, I'm so glad it's not a full Carson where you just disappeared. Like Johnny Carson was this guy we saw all the time, and then he just went away. You're still very much around. You're going to be printing another copy of Eagles Encyclopedia, as you mentioned, book signings, plays, and then, of course, just bringing your Eagles analysis to our screens and our ears and print as well. So just during the time you stepped away out of the limelight for a while, what jumped out? What jumped out to you about that life, being able to sit back, watch an Eagles game for the first time in a very long time?
That was a big part of it. Was actually on Eagle Sunday, just sitting on the couch like everybody else, just watching the game and enjoying it. Now, I had my yellow legal notepad with me the whole time. I took my notes. I logged the game. I charted the plays just like I always did, because at this point, I can't watch a football game and not do that. It's just so, after 53 years, I just can't. So I was doing that, but it was kind of nice that when the game was over, win or lose, I could just kind of hit the remote and go to something else, or just get up and go in the kitchen and have dinner with my wife or something. That was nice. That really was. But as the season rolled along and the wins just kept piling up, it was my wife, actually, Maria, who said, I forget what it was. They were 7-0, 8-0, whatever. And she said, they're going to be calling you. And I said, who? The TV and the radio station. They're going to want you to come back. I said, nah, they've kind of moved on. I don't think so. Like the next day, Michael Barkhead calls and says, hey, listen, we all know they're going to the playoffs, and come January, it's going to be wall-to-wall Eagles. Would you be willing to come back and be part of our postseason coverage? So, I talked it over with my wife. I mean, I didn't want to wind up next to Tom Brady in divorce court. So we talked it over, and she said, "Look, I saw this coming. It's no big thing. I mean, how often do they go to the Super Bowl?" So she signed off on it, and so I told NBC, "Okay, I'll come back." And then right after that, WIP checked in, and they asked if I would do it. And I mean, these seasons like this don't come along all the time. So the opportunity to get back in and have my say, yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Is it true the Bulletin also called you? Just I wouldn't mind. Just write a couple of stories for the old Bullet, just please. No, okay. It is wild because I'm sure after the amount of time that you've put into it, which is a very long time, sitting there on the sofa, I saw the special that was run with you and your son Dave. Yeah. What an incredible thing to first off witness the person that is Ray Didinger and not just the writer / analyst. Just seeing that moment at the Super Bowl 5 years ago, and then being able to see you guys actually kick back and share a game together.
That was great fun. We had they make a point of it in the show, and it's true. People think, oh, they just said that, or they just did that for effect. The idea that we had never watched, David and I had never watched an Eagles game together, and he's 49 years old. But it's true. I mean, we never did because I was always working. I was always either in the press box or in the studio. So we never had that opportunity to, do what fathers and sons do on a typical Sunday. We sit on the couch and watch the Eagles game. So this year, in my new role, when the Eagles opened the season in Detroit, David was coming back. He had been shooting. He shot the whole Thursday night package for Amazon this year. So he worked every Thursday night game. And he also shot Notre Dame on Saturdays. So he had shot the Thursday night game, the first game. Then he shot Notre Dame on Saturday, and then flew into Philly on Monday and came straight here. And we were able to actually watch the Eagles-Lions game together. And it was really a lot of fun. NFL Films was here to film the whole thing, and that was a big part of the Presents piece. And it was really fun. It was really, really good. After the whole thing was done, when I sat back and watched it, I said, I never knew my son was such a great interview. He was, it was really so many people who saw the show said, they said three things. They said, number one, that's a great bulldog you have, the one that was chewing his toy. Number two is, where did WIP get that cake for your going away party? The one that they made in the shape of a giant yellow legal cat. And then the other one was, I had no idea your son was such a great interview, to which I said, neither did I. It was really good. And the guys at NFL Films did, as always, they did a great job with it.
Dave definitely has a personality on him. I have had many great conversations with Dave about some pretty interesting stuff. So yeah, he definitely he's an entertainer. I'll say that as well. I want to go back to this, Ray, because you talked about the Eagles and stacking wins as they had this season. I asked this of a lot of my guests, especially towards the end of the season. When did you realize this season was going to be special? In 2017, we had the amazing field goal by Jake Elliott. It was amazing. Right. And then this year, it was kind of like they just kept stacking wins. Was there a moment, though, that you would look at it this season that would be at all comparable to what Jake Elliott did during the 2017 run? A moment that stuck out that said, wow, this could be the real deal.
Not quite like Jake Elliott, because that was really, it's the longest field goal in the history of the franchise, overtime, all that stuff. I mean, that was really that you had a feeling right at that moment that something special was going on. There was nothing as singularly dramatic as that. But I think I felt the Minnesota game, week 2, when, I knew Minnesota was pretty good. I didn't think they were great, but I thought they were pretty good. And the Eagles just took them apart, and made it look easy. And that's when I said, wow, this team might be really good. I mean, Hurts came out, primetime game, a lot of, home opener, a lot riding on it. And he came out and against a quality team, a playoff team. I mean, he just was in total command. And I thought I going into the season, my prediction was I thought they'd win 11 and win the East. But that night, after watching the way they handled the Vikings, I started thinking, they might be better than that. But I thought all along they'd be a playoff team. I mean, I really did. I thought, in year two, I expected Sirianni to be better. In year two as a starter, I expected Hurts to be better. I thought Howie Roseman did a great job bringing in guys in the offseason. I thought he had some really good signings. I liked their draft. I mean, I thought the roster was much better than it was than the team in Tampa that lost in Tampa. But it was after the Minnesota game, I thought, this team, they really have a chance, because I didn't think there was a super team in the NFC. I kind of thought the NFC, you had some good teams, but I didn't see like some super powerful team that was going to dominate. I thought it was going to be a year when just a good team could win it. Didn't have to be a great team, but a good team. And I began to think in week two that the Eagles might just be that team.
I think for me, it was around that same time when you saw how good the defense could play. And when they did what they did to Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins in that game, it definitely showed you that defense was also going to be special. As far as the quarterback goes, Jalen Hurts, the last time we spoke, talking about, is he the guy? Is he going to be the franchise guy going forward? Will the Eagles be trading or trying to acquire a different quarterback? And then he has this incredible season that nobody saw coming. MVP caliber play, maybe second runner-up to the guy that's actually going to be the MVP and the guy is facing in the Super Bowl, and Patrick Mahomes. But when you think about leaps forward in a career from one year to another, I mean, this has to be comparable to the best, if not the best, in the time you've been covering the Eagles.
Yeah, probably so. It was a pretty dramatic leap. But I think that you and I may have even had this conversation because you're right. I mean, the whole offseason, the whole conversation was, is he the guy? Should we go with him? There was a large number of people that wanted to make a big trade, take all the draft picks, trade them for Russell Wilson, or trade them for Deshaun Watson, or pursue Aaron Rodgers. I mean, there was a lot of that talk out there. And I was pretty consistent in saying, no, I wouldn't do that. Because I thought Hurts last year showed me a lot. I mean, when he played, I mean, it's his first year as a starter, and he did take you to the playoffs and kind of got that season back on track and, won the division, got you to the playoffs. And I just thought, this kid's pretty good. And if you just watch the way he improved from year to year, I mean, from Alabama to Oklahoma to year one here to year two, I mean, you could definitely see the track that he was getting better. And as good as he was last year, I said, he very well may come back next year even better than this. And if that's the case, you might not have to make a trade. You might have your quarterback right here. So I was all in favor of giving him another year. Let's just see what he can do. Just give him another year. And look, if he plateaus or takes a step back, then we can start talking about drafting another quarterback or whatever. But let's give Jalen Hurts a chance to show us what he can really do. And boy, did he ever. I mean, I think at least I saw it even in training camp and in preseason. You just saw he just looked better. I mean, he had put in a lot of work at the passing school out on the West Coast. His mechanics were much better. His footwork was much better. His release, his accuracy, all of that. And the other part of it was he just, working with Sirianni for a year, he just saw the field so much better. I mean, there were days at training camp where the ball never hit the ground. I mean, everything was just on the money and on time. And that's when you saw, or at least I felt, this kid is making real progress. And he's going to be better this year than he was last year. Now, was I thinking he could be an MVP? No. But I certainly saw a guy this summer that was much improved over last year, and clearly the guy that was going to lead this team.
He didn't obviously start out well here in Philadelphia in terms of the draft pick, and nobody wanted a quarterback in the second round. They wanted someone to help out Carson Wentz, who was just signed to that huge deal, right? And we know how that worked out. But Nick Sirianni didn't start out well here as well. We pay maybe sometimes a little too much attention to press conferences. He didn't get introduced in the most confident light here in Philly. And now, not only did he go to the Super Bowl or go to the playoffs his first season as a rookie head coach, he's now in the Super Bowl. You mentioned earlier that Nick Sirianni was a guy you thought would improve in his second year. How much do you think Nick Sirianni has improved in his second year as a head coach?
Considerably. But I mean, we began to see it even mid-season last year when they were 2-5, and it really looked like the whole thing might fall apart. I mean, they looked that bad in a couple of those games. But Sirianni showed me something when he reversed course and said, you know what, this isn't working. We got to try something else. It's a very hard thing for coaches to admit that you know what, this isn't right. What my whole plan here, no, this isn't right. We got to do something different. Boy, coaches, even older veteran coaches, are reluctant to acknowledge that. For a young coach, a rookie head coach in a tough town like this, to at 2-5, just so all of a sudden take a step back and say, "Wow, no, we got to try something different here," and then just do the most obvious thing, which is coaches are so reluctant to do this, but when you're in crisis mode, the simplest thing to do is say, "Wait a minute, what are my strengths? What's the best part of my team? What do I have the most confidence in?" It was his offensive line for sure, and he said, "You know what? If we're going to get out of this, let's go with our best guys." And he just put it on the offensive line and said, "We're going to start running the ball, and we're going to count on you guys to win the battle at the line of scrimmage." And that's how they got the season back on track. And second half of the year, they were a totally different team. And everybody talks about, have the players bought into the coach? Well, they clearly bought in then, because I think the players respect the fact that, this was tough for this guy to admit that we were going down the wrong path here. And I give him a lot of credit for saying, no, we're going to change. We're going to come back and go to something else and have it work the way that it did. And this year, he's just continued to grow into it. And his personality is certainly different. I mean, I can't remember seeing an Eagles coach quite like this guy. Some of the sideline stuff and, the occasional mugging to the camera. It wasn't exactly, I don't think I ever recall Dick Vermeil doing that. But the fact is, he's the best word to describe it is he's authentic. He's himself. He's not putting on an act. He's not trying to be somebody else. He's himself. And I think that's the biggest mistake that coaches, first-time coaches, can make, is to try and be somebody else that they work for. I think some of Belichick's assistants have failed when they became head coaches because they all tried to be Belichick, and there's only one of those.
Right.
And none of Lombardi's assistants ever succeeded. They all got chances because they were Lombardi's assistants, but they all tried to be Lombardi. Mm-hmm. I think you have to be yourself. And Nick is 100% himself. And he's funny, but he's smart and he's intense. And look at where he's got this team. Year 2, he's got him playing for the championship.
Mm-hmm. Before I jump into that Super Bowl, I do want to just real quick. The criticism that Jonathan Gannon gets, both seasons, top 10 defense, this season, obviously a huge leap forward with sacks and turnovers and that whole thing. Does he deserve most of the criticism, all the criticism, not nearly as much criticism? When you look at Jonathan Gannon, what type of defensive coordinator, how good do you think he is?
I think he's good. I think that the criticism is, I think he's been criticized too much. I think people are too quick to criticize, and I think it's more a philosophical issue. I mean, he has one way of doing things. I mean, he's a defensive coach who's going to play pretty conservative defense, and he's going to play 2 deep safeties. He's not going to blitz very much, and his whole philosophy is we're not giving up the big play. We're not giving up the home run ball. People can nickel and dime a little bit, but we're going to make them work their way up the field and trust that somewhere along the line we're going to come up with a stop or a play. That's his philosophy. It's a little conservative, but it's certainly successful. The numbers would bear that out. The problem is that you have a Philadelphia fan base that has a high degree of bloodlust. And you can trace it. You can trace it back to Buddy Ryan. I mean, Buddy Ryan and Jonathan Gannon are on polar opposites in terms of their defensive philosophy. And they were both successful at it. And a lot of the fans here just loved the Buddy Ryan, let's go rip their head off style of defense. You're blitzing on every play, everybody's coming. And it certainly worked to a point, but Buddy never won a playoff game here. With Jonathan Gannon, they're playing in the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. So I think it's, Stan Hochman used to have an expression, different horses for different courses. And I think that, I think Buddy was right for that time and for that group of players. And certainly Seth Joyner reflects that. Every time he opens his mouth, he reflects that. But now, yes, we're years later. It's a different era of pro football. And you have a defensive coordinator here who coaches a different way. But if you just look at the numbers, hard to argue against it. I mean, number one against the pass, 70 sacks. They've now added 8 more in the postseason. I mean, they're really good. And I think that, there's some times that you get in games where the other team, they dink and they dunk and they move the ball up the field and the quarterback's standing there and he's got a lot of time and fans just get frustrated. But the overall philosophy, I kind of get it. And I think this year with the better personnel that he has, he's got a defensive line now that they can win all those battles there. And so you don't have to blitz a lot to get good pressure when you have defensive line as good as this one. And that's sort of what he's had going for him this year. And it's been obviously tremendously successful.
I've had some conversations with people out in the street. I've had some conversations with people in our chat here on the show, and we're all pretty confident in the Eagles going up against the Chiefs. I don't think anyone has it as a blowout. I don't think anyone has the Eagles running up the score or anything like that, but a lot of people are confident, and they're almost like sheepishly confident. If I know that's an oxymoron, but it's like, you're facing Mahomes, you're facing a lot of experience with that Chiefs team. Are we crazy, right, to look at this and go, wow, the Eagles should win this? The Eagles are the better team. Are we crazy to have that feeling?
No. I think the Eagles are better. I think that's fair to say. I will say I kind of agree with your basic point is that maybe people shouldn't be too confident. I think because I have had people, and somebody just 15 minutes ago say he thought the Eagles were going to blow them out. Now I'm not going there, but I think they're better, and I think they should win the game. It is funny to see the Philadelphia fan base this confident about a game of this magnitude, because typically Eagles fans go through life sort of like this,
Yeah, forcing themselves to watch. Sure.
Yeah. Is it over yet? Did he make the field goal? I can't look. That is the more typical posture of the Philadelphia fan, to be sitting here early in Super Bowl week and saying, "Oh yeah, we got this one in the bag." That's a little odd for this town, but I think it kind of reflects the feeling that people have. It doesn't mean that they don't respect the Chiefs or Andy or Mahomes. Certainly they should. They should respect them. But I think it's just sort of the confidence that they have in this team. They've seen them all year. And I really do think they're the best team in the league. I think they are the best team in the league. And people have bought into that idea.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to the quarterbacks, obviously Mahomes has that leg up. But it's like if you're looking at this year, isolated, Jalen Hurts has been right there with them pound for pound. So the confidence level in the quarterback situation, the quarterback matchup, has a lot of people riding a high into this game as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think that and everybody will be doing the matchups, matching up the quarterbacks, matching up the offensive line, who has the edge here, who has the edge there. And in fairness, when people say quarterback, yeah, you would give the edge to Mahomes. I mean, you have to. I mean, Mahomes right now, he's the best player in the NFL, I think. You would give him the edge. But the difference between the two of them isn't like this. I'd give him the edge over Hurts, but it's competitive. I mean, Hurts is right there. And, you got two guys that are both certainly in the MVP conversation. And, I was having a discussion actually with a guy from Kansas City this week. And he was saying, it was a shame that Hurts got injured, because if he hadn't gotten injured, missed those 2 games, he might have won the MVP, but missed those 2 games. And so and I said, I view it totally differently. I said, I think the 2 games he missed further proved how valuable he was to this team. I mean,
absolutely.
You watch the Eagles the rest of this year,
when they had Hurts a quarterback, and then the 2 games with Minshew, you look at the difference between those 2 teams. If you go by the strictest definition of who is most valuable to his team, I think those 2 games prove to you how valuable Jalen Hurts is to the Eagles. Not that Mahomes isn't valuable to the Chiefs. Clearly he is. But I thought people say, oh, he missed those 2 games, so that's why he can't win. I argue the other thing. I think those two games prove why he should win, because he's, again, he's played remarkably well. Even though I thought he was going to have a really good year, and after seeing him at training camp, I was really sure he was going to have a good year if he didn't get hurt. He has exceeded my expectations. I mean, I didn't think that statistically he would be in a place where he is for passes over 25 yards. He's the highest rated quarterback in the NFL. And at the beginning of this year, all anybody said was, I don't know if he has enough arm. I don't know if he can throw the long ball. Mm-hmm. Fact of the matter is, statistically, he threw the long ball better than any quarterback in the league this year. So, I mean, who saw that coming other than maybe Nick Sirianni?
I do want to ask you 2 more real quick, Ray. When it comes to the edge, like where the Eagles have the edge in this game far and away, obviously it's not at the quarterback spot. Where do you think they do have the edge? Like they have to be successful in doing this if they're going to win this game.
Well, 2 different questions. Where they have the edge is the offensive line. I mean, their offensive line against Kansas City's front 7 is a significant advantage for the Eagles, I think. I mean, you saw what their offensive line did to the Giants front 7. And I look at the Giants front 7 as not that different than the Chiefs, to be honest. I mean, they have one really good defensive lineman, the Chiefs do, in Chris Jones. But the Giants had Dexter Lawrence, who was, a guy who's legit Pro Bowler this year and having a great season, and had just come from just absolutely crushing Minnesota the week before. And in that game against the Eagles, I mean, the offensive line made him invisible, And so if a team really only has one stud player on their defensive line, this offensive line can take that guy out of the game. So as good as Chris Jones is, and he's very good, I think the Eagles will keep him from wrecking the game. So the Eagles offensive line really kind of is the key to all of it, I think. But when you're saying what's the one thing, like if the Eagles do this,
right.
Finish this sentence. If the Eagles do, they'll win. Don't turn the ball over. I mean, the regular season, they were 7-0 in games when they didn't turn it over. Postseason, the 2-0, not turning it over. That's really what it is. I don't think, maybe I'll be proven wrong, but I don't think the Chiefs' defense is good enough to stop the Eagles' offense. But the Eagles could stop themselves by throwing interceptions or fumbling or whatever. They could do that. But if they just don't do that, if they don't turn the ball over, I think they'll move the ball. I think they'll score. I think they win.
All right. I like it. I know you're expecting to win. How specific? At the time we tape this, it's Monday afternoon. How specific can we get right now with a prediction from the great Ray Didinger?
This game could go a couple different ways. I mean, you look at, these are 2 of the highest scoring teams in the league, and the over-under sort of reflects that. It's pretty high. I would probably pick a fairly high score. I would probably say like 31-24. But if the Eagles take an approach, which wouldn't be the worst thing, to come out and just play time of possession game and just long drives with the idea being that we're just going to keep that offense off the field. We're going to keep Mahomes and Kelsey off the field, and they could do that. It's kind of the way the Giants won their Super Bowl over the Patriots, when the Patriots were the highest scoring team of all time, Brady, Randy Moss, all that stuff. The Giants just controlled the clock. I mean, the Giants' first possession in that game, they had the ball for 10 minutes. And that was their philosophy. We're just going to win time of possession and keep those guys off the field. If the Eagles do that, I think it's a pretty smart strategy, and that would bring the score down. Like that Patriot Giants game, neither team scored 20. So it could be like that if it becomes a time of possession game. But there's so many playmakers here that I kind of think it won't be that. And they're just going to hit some big plays just because those guys are good enough. So I'm going to say 31-24. But I do see the Eagles winning.
Love it. I'm right in the same ballpark as you, my friend. Ray, thank you for being so generous with your time, not just with me now, but obviously with the great people at WIP, with the great people at NBC Sports Philly, and also going to Barnes & Noble this Saturday. You're going to be there at 3 o'clock in Wilmington, signing copies of your book, as well as Tommy and me coming back to the stage in May at the Bucks County Playhouse, and then in September at the Uptown Theater as well. Make sure you guys check out Bucks County Playhouse and Uptown Theater to get your tickets. Tickets available right now, Ray?
They are indeed.
Look at that. Sold out before we know it. Sold out before we know it. I know it. Ray, thanks so much. Great catching up with you. I hope you get to enjoy the game as well. Always appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Always great to be with you, Mark. Thanks a million.
The great Ray Didinger joining us on the Rothman Orthopedics guest line.